Hello everyone! Some of you may have noticed that Staldata is now releasing its videos on a weekly basis. So basically, each Sunday you may now expect your new Staldata video. And once again, I would like to thank my friends and colleagues from different countries, which are really helpful for building these videos. So many thanks to Brad, to Tik, to Yegor, all the people which make this channel what it is today. Thank you very much, all of you. And I would also like to take this opportunity to tell you a word of gratitude about your many positive, supportive, interesting comments. It's really appreciated. Many thanks. It's really motivation to continue working harder to provide you the best possible studies on this Battle of Stalingrad. So again, really many thanks for your comments, and see you soon on this channel.
14 September 1942. '51st Army Corps, 48th Panzer Corps, 71st Infantry Division, 295th Infantry Division, 62nd Army Headquarters, 10th NKVD Rifle Division, 272nd NKVD Rifle Regiment, 112th Rifle Division, 6th Tank Brigade, 399th Rifle Division, 42nd Rifle Brigade, 244th Rifle Division, 35th Guards Rifle Division, aggregating other units.
The day actually began with a hastily performed Soviet spoiling attack. At 03:30 in the morning of Monday, September 14, 1942, the 272nd NKVD Regiment, one regiment of the 399th Rifle Division, and the few remaining tanks of the 6th Tank Brigade tried to recapture the territory lost the day before, without reconnaissance, artillery or aircraft support, and without any unit to cover their flanks. Needless to say, this attack was not successful. Right after this doomed offensive by 62nd Army, the infantry and tank divisions of the two German armies began their advance to the city. Kobiakov and his staff knew only too well that they could not expect any reinforcements before the 13th Guards Rifle Division could reach the battlefield. It was necessary to hold out for a whole day. 62nd Army's entire sector from Mamayev Kurgan to the central station was open. At 10:30, after aircraft and artillery bombardments, the battalions of the 71st and 295th Infantry Divisions, along with Stug assault guns, moved in. Their task was simple: to reach the Volga in the main crossing area.
14 September 1942. 6th Army Diary. Weather clear, warm. The offensive of 51st Army Corps in the centre of Stalingrad is proceeding successfully, despite the brutal street fighting. 71st and 295th Infantry Divisions advanced on a wide front in a southeastern direction, from the heights on the outskirts of the city through the residential areas up to the Volga River. At 1200 hours, the railway station was captured in heavy fighting. (51st Army Corps). In detail, the right flank of the 71st Infantry Division faced well-fortified enemy defences with dug-in tanks. At dawn, the enemy attacked with a force of 2 battalions southeast of point 459 and was defeated. At 0830 hours, the division went on the offensive, crushed the enemy on the outskirts of the city and broke through to the Stalingrad station. The division resumed the offensive from these new positions, destroyed the remnants of the enemy in street fighting and reached the Volga at 15:15 hours east of the station. By the evening, Infantry Regiment 194, reinforced with assault guns and artillery, fortified the city centre between the central station and the Volga. Infantry Regiment 191 covered its southern flank. At 0700 hours, the 295th Infantry Division launched its own offensive. Infantry Regiments 518 and 516, meeting no serious resistance, reached the railway line north of the station at 12:15 hours. Infantry Regiment 516 took the southwestern slope of Mayev Kugan. Infantry Regiment 518, moving further east, reached the Volga at 1500 hours. The total length of the Volga shore occupied by the evening was 1.5 kilometres.
So now that we reviewed the archival documents from 6th Army perspective, let's have a look at the Soviet perspective, and thanks to Igor Kobiakov and his very extensive research, which provides us a level of detail and accuracy never seen before.
The dust from the bombing had not yet settled as the forward detachments of the 71st Infantry Division reached the railway separating the small wooden houses on the outskirts of Stalingrad from the high brick buildings of the city centre. Similarly, the battalions of the 295th Infantry Division advanced along the southern slopes of Mamayev Kugan and the Dolgi and Krutoy ravines that led directly to the Volga. Following a reconnaissance battalion in armoured personnel carriers and trucks, and supported by self-propelled guns, the main assault groups of the 71st Infantry Division crossed the railway tracks north of the central station and continued to move along empty streets with their shell holes and rubbles, heading for the Volga. Skirmishes erupted occasionally with a few defenders of the city, and then the advance froze while the Stukas took care of the targets, marked by the infantry using rocket flares. Along their way, the Germans left machine gun and artillery nests at important intersections, with a wide field of fire through the city streets. German reconnaissance infiltrated through the porous Soviet positions in the central station area and reached the fallen fighters' square, near the entrance to 62nd Army's command post on Pushkin Street. The staff personnel and soldiers of the Army detachment opened fire. Without responding, the APCs of the German Reconnaissance Battalion rushed further onto the Volga at crossing number 2. The main strike group of the 71st Infantry Division, the 194th Infantry Regiment, and the Stugs of the 244th Infantry Division moved along Kiev and Kursk streets in the direction of the high-rise buildings on the shore, the 3 houses of specialists and the State Bank building, which afforded a commanding view of the 62nd Army river crossings. At 15:15 hours, the 1st Battalion of the 194th Regiment of the 71st Infantry Division, under the command of Captain Hinderlang, reached the Volga in the centre of Stalingrad and captured the houses of specialists and the State Bank. Then, under cover of the buildings, a mortar company was deployed, machine gun nests were dug in, and artillery spotters were set on the upper floors. Regiment Commander Colonel Roska reported by telephone to the division headquarters. The 194th Grenadier Regiment reached the Volga at 15:15 hours. This was the first time the Volga was reached within the city precincts. 4 months later, and not far from this location, the same Colonel Roska was to lead the negotiations with the Soviets on behalf of 6th Army's command for the surrender of the main German pocket of resistance in Stalingrad. As the 1st Battalion entrenched at the House of Specialists, fire exchanges could also be heard in the area of the brewery and the complex of buildings of the NKVD. This area was defended by a composite group of NKVD and Red Army soldiers, 90 men, with 3 Degtyarev machine guns and about a dozen PPSH submachine guns, led by State Security Lieutenant Ivan Petrakov. The German machine guns firing from the State Bank pressed the soldiers into the ground, and mortar shells began to fall all around. The remainder of Petrakov's group gathered on the shore under cover of the State Bank in the area of crossing number 1. Near the brewery, the Germans redeployed a Soviet 76.2mm gun they had just captured and began firing at the crossing. Frightened civilians were sent down to the Volga with an offer to surrender. From the area of the captured buildings came a barking speech with 3 clearly distinguishable words: Schwein, Bulbul, and Volga. Petrakov's fighters remained unmoved. Yet, by the evening, the situation as described in German reports seemed somewhat cloudier. The situation maps and sketches of the battalions of the 194th Infantry Regiment testified to increasing resistance. Red arrows appeared from nowhere in areas already cleared. In the sector of the station, T-34s and Soviet infantry were spotted. The German bombers, called up by radio, bombed the building of the central station and the railway tracks nearby. Despite the purple smoke it deployed there, the battalion of Captain Munich suffered casualties from friendly bombing by the Luftwaffe. Another battalion in the area of the market square came under fire of the Stalin's organs, whose positions were immediately shelled and returned by German artillery fire. But it was nothing compared to what their Soviet opponents faced. The underground command post of the 62nd Army was crowded. Commander Chuikov, Chief of Staff Krylov, and Commissar Gurov conferred in the open, on the street. From the north, gunfire and violent explosions could be heard, the thunder of the battle approaching. Exhausted messengers reported: German infantry on Mamayev Kurgan, enemy machine gunners at the station, heavy tanks spotted near the specialist houses. These were actually Stugs. Both river crossings under heavy fire. The commander of the destroyed 6th Tank Brigade, Lieutenant Colonel Khopko, received the blame while reporting to Chuikov. The equipment was lost, the command staff escaped, and the brigade's headquarters was set up on the shore behind the army headquarters. The only surviving tank of the whole brigade stood on Gogol Street, between the station and the square of the fallen fighters. Its chassis was damaged, but the gun still worked. The brigade commander received the task to regroup the horseless tankmen and recapture the central station, using the tank in support. The tankmen were joined in their attack by the soldiers of the army detachment. By 1800 hours, the fighters of the Consolidated Regiment of the 112th Rifle Division of Captain Asayev and the 269th NKVD Regiment of Colonel Kapranov, moving warily along the northern slopes of Mamayev Kurgan, approached the hill just captured by the Germans. Water tanks were visible on the height 102. Binoculars and stereo tubes shone in torn holes. Yesterday the command post of the 62nd Army was located here, and now the German infantrymen of the 295th Infantry Division were hastily digging in. A volley of Katyusha rockets from the eastern shore covered the area of the water tanks. Dust from the explosions enveloped the top of the mound. Asayev gave the signal with a green rocket, and the Soviet soldiers ran forward to the German trenches before the protective shroud of dust had settled. Somewhere to the right, recovering from the rocket fire, the MG-34s woke up, but then fell silent again in a grenade explosion. The Germans moved away from the water tanks, dragging away their wounded, while Junkers appeared in the sky and began methodically bombing the height. Despite desperate Soviet counterattacks, it seemed nothing could remove the Germans from the main river crossing areas in the centre of Stalingrad. A little more, and General Rodimtsev's arriving 13th Guards Rifle Division would simply have nowhere to land. Rightly assessing this critical moment, Chuikov decided to transfer his very last reserve, a battalion of tanks of the 133rd Heavy Tank Brigade, from the elevator area to the city centre. The KV-1 tanks were met at the Astrakhan Bridge by the Deputy Commander Major Vanrub, who led 3 of them right up to the houses of specialists, whilst the others remained behind to cover the army headquarters and the streets leading to the Volga. The heavy tanks opened fire on the southern house of specialists, trying to suppress the German machine guns entrenched there. They were assisted by crews of anti-aircraft guns. From the area of the monument to Kolsinov, long bursts of DSHK heavy machine guns extended towards the buildings that rose over the Volga banks. The auxiliary command post of the 62nd Army, located on the shore at No. 1 Crossing, was given the task to ensure the landing of the 13th Guards Division at all costs. As it went dark under the steep bank near the State Bank, captured by the Germans, several dozen security officers, policemen and border guards gathered, a detachment under State Security Lieutenant Petrakov. German rockets took off from the roofs of the coastal buildings, illuminating the bank of the river pitted with craters. Suddenly the Germans noticed something, and the black embrasures of the windows of the State Bank flashed with machine gun shots. Traces stretched from the neighbouring houses of specialists in the direction of the river. A leap, and Petrakov's fighters found themselves around the 76.2mm gun captured by the Germans a few hours earlier. A short melee, swearing, wheezing. The remaining Soviet soldiers turned the gun towards the State Bank. Petrakov aimed through the barrel and opened fire. At 2200 hours, the 1st Battalion of the 42nd Rifle Regiment, 13th Guards Rifle Division, began their crossing to Stalingrad.